Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about astrology and what may be a career-ending injury to someone. You may have heard of him by the name of Grayson Boucher. I believe I'm pronouncing his last name right. And he's known as the Professor. And I don't know this 100%, but I believe he may be called the Professor because he takes people to school on the basketball court. He's an iconic street ball player. He's been in some movies, and he just constantly puts on these shrewd basketball moves that outmaneuvers the enemy and the opposition. He is a Gemini sun. Really no shocker there. And what happened was recently he had some kind of injury that looks like it was something with the ankle, Achilles area. And in the title of the video, it stated he suffered a career-ending injury. I'm hoping, being optimistic, that he will come back from this, and it will be, something like within a year. Perhaps he will come back. He does have a resilient Scorpio moon, so and maybe and a lot of his energy. I wanted to say first, having the Gemini Sun and Scorpio Moon. I think that to me that could manifest in Gemini, of course. The Sun in Gemini is like the Sun is what we want, and it's about wanting to express your mental agility, your shrewdness, being able to outmaneuver others, and the fact that the Moon is in Scorpio, that could be through one-on-one competition and done with a lot of passionate energy and emotional intensity. Now, at this, what I want to say is I don't have his time of birth, and this is pure speculation, but I'm thinking he may have a Taurus ascendant, and he does, and just based on his when I see his face and his physique, even though he is slender, he's like 5'10", 155 pounds. A lot of that could be attributed to the Gemini Sun. He does have kind of a stout build, and looking at his face, he's got kind of a full roundish type head. His hair looks like it's slightly, at least somewhat a little bit curly, and the fact is very full featured. The full mouth. He looks like he might be Taurus rising to me, and the thing is, if that's the case, there's a possibility then that transit Uranus was on his ascendant at the time of this injury. And of course, Uranus can be associated with ankles, and I would say Achilles heel as well. And even if it wasn't on his ascendant, it would be likely in his first house with a Taurus ascendant, because transit Uranus is currently at 10 degrees Taurus. So basically, if he has a 10, 11 degrees Taurus or later, as far as the rising sign position, transit Uranus would be in his, or I should say 11 degrees or later, then transit Uranus would be in his first house. But anyway, going back to what I do know about his chart, at this time, transit Uranus was also making an opposition to his natal Mars at this time. And when you're talking about, Mars in astrology can be about physical issues and debilitations just by itself. But if you have transit Uranus making an adverse aspect to it, it can manifest in some Uranus-like issues that might affect, and Mars, of course, could be connected with sports as well, and sports competition. Transit Uranus making an adverse aspect to one's natal Mars can manifest some injuries that could be Uranus related. Again, that could be associated with the ankles or Achilles heel. Now, at this time, or near this time, he had transit Moon close to Uranus, at least at the time when the video was out and when it first came up. Now, he has in his natal, as far as the solar sunrise chart, and of course in the solar sunrise chart is where I put the sun at the same, we put the sun at the same position as the ascendant. And in that solar sunrise chart, he has Uranus and Sagittarius in the sixth house of health and physical issues, which by itself, Uranus and Sagittarius can show, that could be injuries to the ankle, Achilles heel associated with sports, but then to have it in the sixth house on top of it, in transit Moon was in at least fairly close proximity to that Uranus. So that would could manifest in something, that kind of an injury, something ankle related, with sports going public at the time, and something that would cause perhaps more emotional distress as well. And going back to the fact now, if he does have Taurus rising, transit Pluto could be might be very close to his natal, not far from his MC, in which could be an indicator of the obliteration of one's career. I hope that this has not transpired. I hope that, again, not to be redundant, but hoping that this is not going to be career ending for him. And again, in his natal chart, I want to say his planet Uranus also opposes his sun. So that's another thing which could be an indicator to increase the propensities for some physical injuries associated with Uranus, which could be something with the Achilles heel or ankle, and also he might have had some injuries, maybe just with the lower leg in general, the calves, the shin area. It wouldn't surprise me if he's had injuries associated with that, based on how Uranus is placed in his chart. Now, another thing too is that, looking at this as well, and as far as his, you're talking about, he has Uranus on the MC in the solar sunrise chart, and that could be having that reputation, that public image, as an innovator. And he obviously, I'm sure he's come up with a lot of basketball moves that we never seen before. And the fact that one of the rulers, falls in his sixth house, that is something that could be demonstrated and shown in the daily routine. Now, another thing that I noticed too, in his chart, he has Neptune in Capricorn at 0 degrees. Now, when you're talking about 0 degrees in astrology, I see that even, I mean, maybe more so in fixed signs, but it can be about, like, once, about somebody. 0 degrees could be about initiative and enterprise, but I think it can be about, once you started something, you're always is. But I think that would be more connected with fixed signs. But what I wanted to say is that when I'm looking at, Neptune in Capricorn, 0 degrees transit South Node has made a separating conjunction to it. Now, when you're talking about Neptune in Capricorn, that could sometimes, even though it's generational, I see that as that could manifest in some kind of, Capricorn is career related. Neptune could be about filmography. So it could be about something with filmography associated with one's career that maybe he'll be going away from for at least some time, because the transit South Node, when you're talking about the South Node in transit, it can reflect what one may be going away from. And South Node being in Sagittarius, it could be something sports related. So it's not surprising this is happening. I think there's some people that have speculated that this might be a hoax, that he's not really as injured as strongly as he's stating, or as what the video is. But I believe that this is likely very authentic and real. Unfortunately, that some people may think that this was some kind of bait, like clickbait. In other words, clickbait, I guess, is like a term people use, is where somebody's using, some kind of, it's like a gimmick or some ploy to give others incentive to click on the video in order to generate, more views and greater viewership for that video. But I don't think that's the case. I think, very sadly, that this is actually something that did transpire. Another thing that I've noticed too is that he does have transit Uranus in the solar sunrise chart is in his 12th house of endings, and Uranus can be associated with something that would be something with the ankles or Achilles heel. And the fact that it's in Taurus, it could be one that might be more of a stubborn or persistent, more of an obstinate issue with with that ankle and Achilles heel. In his natal chart as well, I mean, he does have Chiron conjunct his Mercury. So that, in Mercury being in its dignity in Gemini, Chiron is at 4 degrees Gemini, which is a critical degree, of course. And I see Chiron when it's conjunct Mercury, that could be issues, some wounds and suffering associated with mobility. It's in the 12th house of isolation, of solitude, seclusion, and secret sorrows. So that could be one way that that may manifest and pan out. Um, so I think, I mean, at this time, sadly, he does. I think this is actually very real, and I do hope that he does make recovery sooner than later. He's got Mars conjunct Saturn and Scorpio in his chart as well, and there was one video where it showed that he had some kind of groin injury. And when you have Mars and Scorpio by itself, can sometimes manifest in those kind of injuries. But when you have Saturn connected with it, it could give a little bit more, a little more difficulty with it, and a little bit more sorrow, more despondency and sadness associated with it. But if he does indeed have a Taurus ascendant and he has a Scorpio moon, it tells me that he could actually be very strong-willed. He's going to have, very strong. The moon in Scorpio could have that indomitable spirit or soul, and then you have the Taurus ascendant. If that is the case, that could demonstrate outwardly very good qualities of persistence, patience, and perseverance. And again, it wouldn't surprise me if he was Taurus rising. I think it's safe to say it's probably a feminine ascendant. Feminine ascendant, of course, is one that is earth or water, because he has a very kind of roundish look to his face, and it's kind of a softer face. Masculine ascendants tend to have more of an oblong shape, and the structure is stronger. So those are some ways you could distinguish between a feminine and masculine ascendant. But anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.